Righty ho campers, how are we diddling? Welcome back to part 4 of BPM number 1, Beat Production Mondays, here on Unknown Audio. So, let me just turn my headphones down, don't want to deafen myself. Okay, so I'm still working on this tune. Just to let you know, I'm doing another voiceover on this bit because I don't think I talk through the through the entirety of this part of the video. In watching this recording back, I found that I had a bit of an issue towards the end of the video with some audio glitching, some quite unpleasant audio glitching. So I'm going to try and cut out most of the end of the video. Thankfully, I don't think there was too much of the production that was left. A few sort of tweaks and twiddles here and there. But yeah, I think when I didn't notice it when I was recording. I think it must be when the screen capture was happening. I believe it must have been my computer just wasn't coping with running Logic and the screen capture software, and it was probably trying to do a backup at the same time. I didn't realise. So yeah, at this point I've got the main part of the tune down, and it's really just tweaking from this point out. So at the moment I'm just working on some of the I've got the sort of little shakery hat kind of sounds, and I've got another weird little piece of audio that I've kind of turned into a sort of hat or shaker sound, and I'm just I believe what I'm using here is a plugin called Rough Rider by Audio Damage. Really good free plugin. It's quite a less than subtle compression, and it's really good to use to really sort of heavily compress something. I like to use it on parallel channels, so drum bus compression. And if you want to sort of compress reverbs and delays and other send effects and really push, boost the overall what's the word? I don't know. Presence in the track of of your effects channels, it can be really useful to use. So I'm going to try and talk you through what my thought processes were and what I was doing with the track. I think I've just adjusted the levels. Sorry, I wasn't actually paying attention. I think I've just adjusted the levels so that we weren't getting too much of we weren't overloading the main output channel basically. And I think I'm about to stick a limiter on here. Yeah, I'm using Ozone, and actually adding this is probably what started to cause the glitching, because it's quite a processor hungry plugin. As brilliant as it is, it's quite processor hungry, and my computer is old and I really need to update my whole system, which I do intend to do very soon. But yeah, for the time being it does struggle with things like this. So I should point out I've chopped a bit of the video where I was just messing around with these kind of shakery hi-hat type sounds. I spent really quite a lot of the time making this tune trying to mess about with these kind of sounds. I'm not even sure if or how much of this ends up in the actual sort of tune as it stands at the moment. not that it's finished. But it's one of those things, getting hi-hats or some kind of rhythmical high-end happening in a tune sometimes can seem like quite a simple thing, but getting them right can often be quite difficult, and they add so much to the kind of groove and the feel of a tune. So it really does pay to get them right. If you can do that in 5 seconds flat, then brilliant, more power to you. If you have to spend a bit of time really tweaking them, then so be it if it gets you the results. Sometimes maybe you need to say, hang on, these aren't working, what I'm doing currently isn't working, let's just scrap it and try something else. And in hindsight, perhaps I could have done that here. But I'm just using another free plugin. This one is the TAL or TAL Filter 2 plugin. Trying to create a bit of movement on these hat sounds, or on the actual one of the sends for the hat. So it's like an echo, I believe, sort of a delay channel. Trying to filter the delays a little bit to give us some interesting movements, hopefully. So you may notice here I've got the these chopped bits of audio on a pre-fader on bus 1. So they're sending to bus 1 but on a pre-fader, which means that they will still be sending signal as long as I've got some dialed in on the send, even if the fader for that channel is pulled all the way down. And it can be a nice way to use sort of parallel processing effects channels. Sometimes you don't want any of the dry signal at all, and you just want pure the pure effects. And you may argue, well, why would you put the effects on a send in that case, rather than putting them just directly onto the main track with full wet on whatever effects you're using, whether that's delays or reverbs and such like. For me, it just gives me a lot of creative flexibility, really. You may want to send more than one instrument to an effects channel. Some of those instruments you may want dry signal with some of the effects. Others you may want just the pure wet effects without any of the dry signal. It allows you to it just gives you much more flexibility. So if it's not something you're in the habit of, if you tend to put most of your effects on the actual audio channel or instrument channels that you're using, I recommend just trying it out and see what kind of benefits it can give you your productions. I've done a video on parallel processing. You can check that one out if you have a look through my video archives. So while I'm not doing an awful lot, I'm just going to give you some, just a bit of info on updates on what's happening with Unknown Audio. This year I really would like to try and push the channel up, and I want to try and become a bit more professional in the way that I approach making videos, try and commit to getting videos out much more regularly. I want to try and improve the quality of the videos. I want to make them more entertaining for you guys. I want to improve my editing skills so there's less faffing about. I want to try and maybe put some thought into what I'm going to be filming. I mean, I do put thought into the videos as they stand, but maybe if I could plan them out a little bit more, maybe I would even write a script. I don't know. I've always shied away from writing scripts because then I feel like it's going to sound forced, and personally I like someone speaking off the cuff rather than speaking from a script, but it's something I may experiment with. As you can hear, we're starting to get some audio glitching. So what am I doing at the moment? Sorry, I'm not paying attention again, am I? Okay, so I was trying to experiment with using a tremolo on the I believe that was like a delay channel, and now I'm trying to use the noise gate. I think what I'm trying to do is I still want the echo sort of delay effect, but I want to cut out as much of the unnecessary kind of noise as possible. Noise gates are really useful for this. They don't always work, but when they do, they're very, very useful. Hang on. Sorry, I'm just in the middle of filming. Wait till I pause the video. What's going on? So yes, also while we're just chatting away, or well, I'm chatting away, in all honesty, I'm sat in a room on my own talking to no one really, but hopefully if someone's watching this video, even if it's just one person, but while we're on the while we're chatting away, as I was saying, if I'd be quite interested with the channel to do some collaborations, if there's anyone watching that would be interested in that, either musical or in terms of making a collaborative video, or both even, you know, maybe a collaborative piece of music and video. So if there's anyone watching that would be interested in that, you can always send me a message, drop me a line, and it's definitely something I'd be interested in pursuing. So here I am still tweaking these shaker sounds, and I've put an auto filter now on the main channel, and I'm sending the sound out on a pre-fader to that delay effect, but I've got absolutely no dry signal at all, so it seems like quite a strange way to try and get an interesting sort of rhythmical pattern. In hindsight, I probably should have just scrapped this whole recording and tried something else, but it is nice to use your own recorded sounds, I think, if you can, and I would recommend you trying that if you're not in the habit of doing that, even if it means using less than ideal quality microphones. You can be quite creative with the way that you use your recordings. They don't always have to be super pristine high-end, lovely, beautiful audio recordings, you can be very creative, and it's very useful to have something that is unique to you, something that no one else has, and that's what an original recording will give you. So something worth pursuing, I think. Unfortunately, we're getting a lot of the audio glitching. I may have to cut this video short soon. I don't know. We'll see how bad it gets. So here, I think I'm probably feel like it's time to start work on some of the arrangement. So I'm actually so far we've only been working on a 4-bar loop. I do really like that interesting texture we got with that sound from the ES2. It took a lot of messing about to get there, but really happy with how that sound came out. Just playing about with the arrangement, just trying to strip back different elements, mute certain regions, bring other ones in, just to see what would work and see how maybe we can build the tune, introduce things. Sometimes the I guess the main sort of Chicago stack keys part, if you want to call it that, the sort of echoey, delayed keys part, is the kind of hooky part of this, the instrumental part of this tune. And sometimes you want to have that from the beginning to sort of give you the hook, I suppose. But sometimes if you bring something like that in too early, or you have it in for too much of the song, it becomes a bit staid and a bit stale. So once again, playing around, messing about with this sound. I think it's just a little audio snippet of something. I don't even know what the original sound is. The way I'm treating it here with an auto filter, a tremolo, a noise gate, delay, and then another tremolo, I don't think it really matters what the original sound is, to be honest. I think it could be almost anything, to be honest. And here I'm just using a high pass and low pass filter, so creating a band pass really. This is something that's really quite useful to do from a mixing point of view. You really need to make space in the frequency ranges for all of your instruments and different sounds to fit together. A sound that is, a sound whose character largely resides in one area of the frequency range. It doesn't need all of the low end and lots of the really sparkly highs. You might as well try and trim away as much of those excess parts of the frequency range as you can, without as long as you don't detriment the the essence of that sound. But it does pay to try and trim away as much as possible to carve out space for the rest of your sounds and make space in your mix for other things. That being said, you want to be a little bit careful, because you can go a bit too extremes with that and end up with very thin sounds, and it's not always what you want. So it's very much a balancing act, as a lot of mixing is really. What am I trying here? Adding a ring shifter. So I've sent that to bus 4, which I believe has also got some delay on it. And that filter, yeah, it's an echo with the filter. And now I'm adding a ring shifter, which is, and I'm playing about with the delay. So I'm again adding more delay. Delay is one of the most useful plugins and tools. I think perhaps even more so than reverb. Reverb, you have to be a little bit careful, but you do with delay even. But delays can give you a real sense of space and interest to a sound, and make something sound quite professional and polished if you're clever about the way you use it. And I think for a long time I overlooked how useful delay is as an effect. So here I'm adding a tremolo. I tend to do this quite a lot, I think, where I will take a sound that I'm trying to work on, and I will kind of almost overload the sound with effects of one type or another, and then I will try and use another plugin to sort of clamp down on them to cut them out again. You can get some interesting effects with that without sort of cluttering up your mix too much. I'm not sure it's working in this case. I'm not sure whether this sound that I'm working on really ends up being used. So now I'm just trying to look for a different part of the waveform. But as I said earlier, I don't think it even really matters what the audio is. The way that I'm treating it, it could almost be anything, I think. It's just becoming some weird sort of rhythmical texture really to the tune. I do very much enjoy using the ring shifter. I think it's got a lot of potential for getting some interesting sounds. I do actually own a guitar pedal, a wah-wah pedal, that has a ring shifter built in. I've got a feeling though that the ring shifter part of it stopped working, which is really annoying, because I would really quite like to try and send some sounds out of my projects, send it through the pedals and maybe through an amp with some reverb on or something, and capture that back in. In order to do that, I'd need a reamping box really, which I don't currently have, but I may look to purchase one of those at some point. If you don't know what a reamp box is, I'd go and have a look on Google or YouTube or something. They're very good if you're recording guitars and bass, things like that. If you DI your instruments direct into your audio interface, essentially you can send the signal back out from your audio interface into an amp and reamp any performances that you create. If you were to do that without a reamp box, the level that the signal comes out of your audio interface is not at line level or is it at line level? I forget what line level is. Basically, the signal coming out of your audio interface is not at the correct impedance. It needs to be at a high impedance to go into a guitar amp. If you just take it straight out of your audio interface, it's not going to be at the right impedance, and it will sound bad basically, and you could do some damage to your audio interface. You could damage your guitar amps, pedals and such like. So I would suggest do not try doing that unless you've got a device, a reamp device, that will step the signal to the correct impedance. I don't know a lot about that kind of thing. It's really, those kind of things go a little bit over my head. I would like to learn more about it. But something that could be really interesting. Especially I'd like to do things like sort of sending vocals back out of a project, and try sending those through a guitar amp and get some reverb on those, maybe sort of with a microphone set up in a room, sort of at the other side of the room, to get some of the room sounds, maybe just to use as an effect and blend back in with the original vocal. So many possibilities with music. That's what I love about it. There's so many things that you can do, and there's so many new and unique methods you can try. So I'm still playing with this strange sound. At the moment I've bypassed the send to the bus 1. I've got it on a pre-fader to bus 4. We're just EQing a bit more, just trying to focus in on the most essential frequencies. So the audio seems to have been okay for the time being. As I said, when I did the screen capture, I didn't realise until after I had finished recording and watched it back that we were getting audio glitches. So I have had to cut this making of video a bit short. However, most of the stuff that I cut out was me trying to record in some vocals, and I think that spared you I think that spared you some rather unpleasant times having to listen to me attempting vocals, so maybe it's a good thing. If you're in a situation similar to myself where you're making music and you're not a very talented or confident singer or vocal performer, but you're interested in working with vocals, I really would recommend giving it a go. Trying to record yourself, recording your own vocals. I mean, you could work with samples. That's one way to practice your skills at using vocals. However, I find it's quite difficult to come across good vocals, and when you're in a creative flow of something, having to stop to search through either samples that you already have, or to search online for samples, or even to go through, if you're lucky enough to have a decent vinyl collection, or whatever it is, whatever your source for collecting samples is, I find it just kills creativity when you're having to stop to search for things. And I would much rather record in my own vocals, even if you have to warp them even if you have to warp them a lot to to get them to sound sort of bearable to your own ears. I'm just putting in some hi-hats, and I just point out I'm messing about with trying to move the hi-hat sounds off the grid slightly. I don't want them perfectly quantized because we've got quite a off-kilter sort of groove with the rest of the tune anyway. I wasn't really thinking about any kind of particular swing. I don't think. I was just trying to move certain beats, mainly the off beats, slightly off the grid to add a bit of swing and a bit of groove. Now I'm just playing around with some other sounds. I hope I move that clap in a minute. I don't like that there. Come on, man, move that clap. That's not working now. Get rid of those claps. That's it. Move them or get rid of them or something. It's quite frustrating sort of watching back these screen recordings because I want to grab my mouse and to manipulate the tracks again, but I can't because I've already done it. It's kind of like when I watch other YouTube videos, I quite enjoy watching people doing lots of different crafts, a lot of woodwork videos and machining videos or whatever. If I'm watching someone I don't know, building a guitar or doing some other woodworking project and they're drilling a hole or they're sawing something and there's sawdust all over the workpiece, I want to blow on the screen and blow that sawdust away, even though I know I can't. Same thing here. I want to adjust things that I can't. Oh well. It's here I'm just adjusting the velocities of the MIDI regions. This is something it can be quite a laborious thing to do, but I think it really pays off if you're using MIDI drums. You want to try, I think, and introduce as much humanness into the feel of the drums as possible. If I could play drums, if I had a drum kit, I would love that. But if I could play drums, I would maybe even try recording, even if I could get a little drum pad or something to play in the parts, to give a bit more feel and articulation in the velocity. But if you don't have that ability or that you don't have the necessary equipment to do that kind of thing, it really does pay to try and think about these things and adjust the velocity of notes and the placement of the notes so that sometimes they aren't always perfect, just to add that extra bit of humanness to the groove. It really does help. Another thing I quite like to do is to use sort of found samples and again maybe recorded sounds, something that has a bit of a a rhythmical element to it. And it doesn't have to be sort of tempo synced. It doesn't have to be something that you deliberately have sort of found to fit with the groove of your tune. If you sort of chop things about, even if within the little segments that you use, if they're not to the tempo of your tune, if you chop them at points within the bar that fall on the grid, you can quite often get some quite interesting grooves that way. So that's another thing that's worth experimenting with. Here we go. I'm getting rid of that weird resonant peak I put into the kick sound. I'm glad I did that. That's you shouldn't really need to EQ a kick that heavily. You're just gonna, more than likely, you're gonna introduce more problems than you solve doing that kind of thing. If you are having to boost that drastically, generally I would suggest trying to find a different kick sample or sound to use, or try pitching the kick differently. So I've added a little bit of a what would we call this? A little percussive flourish, just to help us sort of roll into the snare sound. I'm compressing very heavily there. I guess I just wanted. I guess I wanted very similar dynamics for all of the sounds. That's better. I'm glad I finally decided to move that clap. That needed to happen sooner. Oh well, everything in its own time, I guess. Okay, I think at this point I decide to get rid of the second snare. Which I think works better. I think I add in another kick here. Sometimes taking something away that you would normally expect to hear something as fundamental as a snare sound, that usually one of the most important sounds for centering the whole rhythm and groove of a tune, is simply changing where the snares fall can take you from, you know, a regular time to double time to half time, or you can sort of really throw the rhythm off by just moving it sort of slightly a beat early, things like that. So the snare is very crucial to the overall rhythm and groove of a piece of music, and so to mute or to cut out a snare where you would expect to hear it can sometimes have more impact than, you know, having a very loud aggressive snare, or a really interesting reverb or delayed snare sound, or something that's worth thinking about in your own compositions. Sometimes less is more, and to actually remove items that and remove sounds is often more powerful than to add sounds. So I'm just adding an extra kick in here, and I'm trying to decide where it sits best. Now I'm putting the snare back in. Did I? I'm pretty sure I removed that snare. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. So what I was doing there is I was moving the snare on my main drum channel, and I was moving it so that it's happening a beat earlier than you were expecting it. What I've done is I've highlighted the Boutique 808 kit as well, the MIDI region there, so that I could line it up with one of the notes that was happening. I believe it was a snare, clap sound. I was just trying to line those two up, which is why I had both regions highlighted. Again, I'm doing the same, lining up a kick sound, I believe, with the 808 bass sound. Oh. And it's all quiet. What's happening? Have I passed out at my computer? Did I suffer with an unexpected episode of narcolepsy? What's going on? Hello? Oh, I'm at the end of the video. Ah, okay. Right, that's the end of the video. Okay, so I've cut it short before we got to the really unpleasant audio glitches. Okay, well there we go. I apologise that the end, or this last part of the video has not been the best in terms of quality. I really want to try and get one of these Beat Production Monday videos out once a week, every Monday. It's kind of a challenge to myself to become more productive and be more committed to the channel, and to try and get at least one video out every week, every Monday. We'll be back soon with some more content, some more BPMs, Beat Production Mondays. Stay tuned to check that out. Thanks guys. See you on the flip side.